thanks for tuning in today. We're going to be talking about how to pick the right contractor and what possible red flags you could run into while you're looking for a contractor to do your outdoor space. Jacob here is our supplier from Yorktown Materials, and he's been supplying our materials for quite a while. And we're just going to have a dialogue about what things could go wrong, what things to look out for, maybe some things that could actually hurt you in the distant future. One thing to note is that even though we're in coastal Virginia, this doesn't apply just in this region. This is something that can happen all over the country. And we want to identify those things and educate you guys on what to look for when you're looking for an outdoor space contractor. From a business perspective, what do you think a contractor should have set in place, just from a business perspective?
Normally, when you are looking for a contractor, you want to see that they are licensed and insured.
Yep.
You want to see workman's comp. You want somebody that you can trust that can walk you through from start to finish, from the subgrade to the maintenance in the end when the installation's done.
Yeah, a lot of municipalities in Virginia, especially, and other places around the country, they require not only for you to have your licensing in place, so there's a contractor's license, right? But then there's also a business license. So your contractor's license is issued by the state. And that is just saying like, hey, I've gone through the methods and know the understanding of contract law
Correct.
and stuff like that, and I'm actually a contractor. So making sure that they have their contractor's license in place. But then the municipalities say, hey, you need a business license as well. And as a Class A contractor, they then require a business license in each municipality. So like Gloucester,
Correct.
Virginia Beach, all these different places require us to have business license. And then the workers' comp, like you mentioned, that's important because if somebody gets hurt and they don't have workers' comp, you know who's liable for that.
Yes.
The homeowner's liable for that if they don't have workers' comp. So from a business structure, business license, contractor's license, liability insurance, workers' comp. I know like efflow has been one of those issues that's come up over the years, how to handle that and what you're supposed to do and things like that.
So I will say efflorescence, the contractor can't control how much efflorescence comes out of the product.
Right.
We can control which manufacturer that you can pick. That kind of, we know who's a little bit more consistent, who has less issues with the efflorescence.
Those of you that don't know what efflorescence is the limestone that's in the concrete as the paver is created. That's what makes it hard. That's the active ingredient in it. What happens is as moisture travels up through the base, through the paver, it pulls out these calcium deposits that are actually in the pavers, and then they settle on the top where it's got these salt kind of deposits that go over the top, and eventually it goes away, right?
Correct. So when manufacturing, just like you explained it perfectly, I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's a calcium bicarbonate.
Okay. That
when pavers are manufactured, they cure in the plant, but then they have a certain amount of time before they're actually, when they're exposed to weathering, hot, cold temperatures, where that efflorescence will bleed out. So that's why normally when you are talking to somebody about sealing, they will recommend that you wait, 3 to 6 months. Let that efflorescence bleed out, let the paver fully cure, clean it, the efflorescence will go away, in most cases.
We say all that because that's not something that a contractor has control over. That's not a quality control issue. That's not a red flag. Base preparation, how important is that?
Base preparation is something that I touch on the most normally, whether if I'm talking to a contractor or even to a homeowner directly. The base is probably one of your less expensive part of the projects, but it is like the most important part of the project in my opinion. If you do not have a good, strong base, you're susceptible to low spots, water puddling, paver joints expanding, the patio failing in the long run. But the base is probably the most important part of the project, I would say.
So how quickly do you think somebody would know that that's an issue? Are we talking about months, years? How long are we talking? Weeks?
So it will depend. Normally, when you're dealing with a contractor, you want them to follow ICPI standards, which is whether if it's a pedestrian rated walkway or if it's a vehicular rated hot tub style pad, base thicknesses are different. You normally want to know that they're using 3 to 4 inches of some sort of crushed stone and then a leveling sand on top. If it's not, open grade base is becoming very popular.
Well, I know like open grade, which is ideally you put down a fabric, then you're putting down, 4 to probably 8 inches of 57, depending on the application, which is a clean aggregate. And then on top of that, you're screeding out number 8s.
Correct.
Yeah, and then if it's a driveway application, GeoGrid, but I think a lot of people are starting to use GeoGrid in just a regular patio now.
It does not hurt. Things like people are figuring out that little tips and tricks like that only just help stabilize the base. They only make the patio and that your installation lasts longer, and you know, that's your investment. Again, the base is what will hold that investment up in the long run.
One of the things that we've seen is when you're not doing an open grade or you're not doing a thick enough base, like we'll see people use stone dust.
Yes.
As a
stone dust is actually a really big issue. That is one of the red flags. If you were dealing with a contractor who's still talking about doing the entire base from top to bottom and just stone dust, the people that regulate the ICPI and the standards, they have completely forgotten about stone dust. They've learned that stone dust holds moisture.
Yep.
Moisture is bad for the polymeric sand in the joints of the pavers, and again, moisture is bad for promoting that efflorescence to come out of the paver. It holds water and moisture long term. It's going to promote settling. So at the very most, if you are going to go with a contractor that is using stone dust, at the very most, use it as screed. Please put some crushed stone or some clean stone down below it.
So when looking at a contractor, when you're talking about their licensing, we know that, but now you're looking at how they're preparing their base. And it's really important to make sure that they're not using stone dust at all, if possible. And like Jacob said, if they are using stone dust, make sure that they're screeding it and they're not building the entire base out of it. Because what ends up happening is, over time, those pavers then get kind of like a wave action in them as moisture migrates through the space. It pulls those fines, that stone dust fines, out, and then you have puddling areas probably as soon as a couple months after the construction is over. So it's a pretty quick process. Like, you generally see that the base is not is not holding up very quickly.
Yes.
So we've talked about business, we've talked about base prep. How about just simple things to look for while you're kind of designing a space?
So when you were picking a contractor, you would like to see the contractor who is able to identify like grade issues or potential drainage issues.
One thing I see often is people, like if this is we'll call this the floor of the house, they'll put a paver perfectly level with it.
Yes.
And maybe it doesn't drain off a lot, and so what ends up happening is moisture then gets driven into the house.
Into the house.
And over time, what ends up happening is this just all rots. And so like, especially at doorways, you know, like, hey, we'll make a nice level space for you. But instead of dropping down a couple inches, now that moisture is driving up underneath the house. I know that's a big concern.
That's an issue. So things like that I'll see that will commonly happen to are like homeowners or contractors will think it's okay like to do a patio like on a small slope at the back of the house without setting like a retaining wall. On an actual paver patio, I believe it is a 1/4 inch per foot.
Right.
That is what you want the slope to be.
Yeah.
So if you are working with a grade in your backyard that you were trying to put a patio on that exceeds that, I would recommend excavating, setting a base course for a retaining wall, and using, build that part of your property up, backfill, lay the pavers over top of that.
Yeah.
You don't want to lay your patio on that much of a slope.
Then if that slope is too much and then you're building up, a foot of base.
Correct.
Now we've got an issue where, hey, you don't have a wall, you don't have something retaining that base, and that base can eventually give out, right?
Yes.
And then your pavers are going to be compromised. So if you've got probably maybe 10 inches, 12 inches or so of grade over the course of the patio, that you probably should build that up, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things that you should know ahead of time. The contractor should be able to identify ahead of time, because when you either sign a contract or you have a price set in mind and you're midway through that project, and you either have to change your course of the installation, or the patio gets done, you pay your contractor, and then the patio blows out, like you're going to be spending
more money
than you would have on the original investment.
Another thing to note while we're talking about patios and grade and building up is what you're backfilling with. This is a really important thing. When you're backfilling with stone dust like we talked about, or crusher run, or even soil, I see a lot of contractors use soil to bring grade up. That is a major red flag. If you're going to move soil and then put grade on top of it and then put your pavers on top of that, it's not a question of if it'll settle, it's just a question of when it will settle. This is probably the biggest red flag that I see when I'm talking to homeowners about what people are saying is they're gonna backfill with sand, they're gonna backfill with topsoil, they're gonna backfill with maybe clay or something like that. And you're talking, a couple feet of soil. And then what ends up happening is that couple feet of soil compresses. Yep. There's something to be said for soil that's already compacted that we're building on top of versus fresh soil.
You want somebody that has a fair bit of experience in that, who has installed many over the years. Retaining walls obviously require, full excavation, anywhere from 12 to 18 inches of backfill, depending on how high of a wall you're doing or what sort of weight you're trying to bear with the wall.
Tiebacks.
You need drainage fabric to separate from the excavate, where you excavate the dirt out, that separates that soil from the clean backfill and retaining.
And the price difference on some of these things can be pretty crazy. You could talk to a contractor who knows how to build a wall, and then you could talk to a contractor who's never built a wall, and the price honestly could probably be half.
If you are dealing with a contractor who is 40% less than your other guy, I would be asking questions.
Why are you 40% less?
Correct. I'm a big fan of the quote, you get what you pay for. And if there is a guy that's significantly less than the other guy, you know, ask questions. Do not get excited over the price. When you are that homeowner making that investment into your home, ask questions.
One guy might say, hey, it's 13 grand, and then I come in and I say it's 20. Maybe we had a different scope.
Yes.
Right? So
or maybe you identified the potential like drainage issues or the potential grade issues.
Sometimes maybe the contractor who's twice as much, maybe he's seeing that he needs a wall. Maybe he's seeing that he's going to be using open grade base because he needs more than 4 inches of base in this application. You know, maybe he's seeing a bunch of other stuff that he's just going to be handling. So how often do you see from a homeowner standpoint that they sell one thing and then it ends up being way more because of all the stuff that they realized as they got into the project?
That were unaccounted for, or you know, had to make a change, or yes, that absolutely happens, and it is not a very fun process for the homeowner or the contractor to figure out after that.
And I know for us, we've had scenarios where I'll talk to somebody on the phone, I'll give them a ballpark price, and they don't hire us. And they call me a year later. Usually I end up hearing like, oh man, you know, this is what happened, and this is how it went. And I'm not saying that we're perfect, because we definitely miss stuff and we definitely overlook things. Like, that's just not the case.
It will happen.
But if there's a big price discrepancy, sometimes that probably means the guy who's doing it, he's got the experience and the knowledge that every time he ran into, could be that it's clay soil, could be that it's dropping off 12 inches, it could be that the access is tight, you know, and he's calculating these things.
You know, just because you're a little bit higher, if something were to happen during that project, we are covered, the homeowner's covered, the contractor's covered, the job will get done.
Because one of the worst things to do is go to a homeowner after it's said and done and been like, hey, this was a $10,000 job and I need another, you know.
We had a boo-boo, now it's gonna be a $20,000 job. Nobody's perfect again, but normally if you're dealing with somebody who's experienced, they can identify the potential issues up front and hopefully save that problem from happening.
We've talked about licensing and business, grade and base, walls and construction, outside factors. So now they have to take this and they have to apply it. How are you going to sniff this person out?
If you're dealing with a reputable business, normally word of mouth, reviews online, anything like that. But again,
Stalk them. Go on their Facebook.
Watch videos. Try yourself to understand what is going to be done at your house. You know, and just ask a lot of questions.
Obviously, they might not have, the best contractor might not have a good website. They might not be good on camera. You know, they might not have a great Instagram or Facebook, but they should at least be able to show you pictures of their work, and they should at least be able to show you things that they've built. Google search them, ask for a referral from a friend, go on their Facebook. Anything else that you would want to see in a contractor when you're picking them?
Again, just like we touched base on in the beginning, always make sure that they're licensed and insured, and that they have all the certifications and that they're legitimate to make that big of an investment on your home.
If you're in Virginia, it's as simple as going to DPOR and typing in the contractor's name, and it should pull up their license, whether it's active or not. And then, you know, the business license stuff, you can just call the county and they'll tell you. So, as you can see, we've gone over.
Oh, bad timing. Oh, bad timing.
There's just a couple things to look for when you're looking for a contractor to build your outdoor space. As always, thanks for following along. If this was helpful, do give us a share, because that helps us when we're creating all this content, and we really appreciate every share we can get. As always, get outside, my friends. Man, this is a Weston fireplace. This is the Belgard fireplace. It's kind of built with all this Weston block. It's kind of a cool fireplace. But I'm really just doing this to make an awesome ending for this video.